All right, everybody. Aloha. My name is Shelby Morrison, and I am the Programs and Communications Coordinator at ikahi Mediation Center. Welcome to our Finding Solutions Growing Peace Brown Bag Lunch series. ikahi is a nonprofit mediation company that started in 1983 as a program of the island of Hawaii's YMCA, and in 2006, we became our own independent nonprofit. We serve all of East Hawaii, but we do have sometimes people coming in from all over. We empower people to come together, to talk and to listen, to explore options, and to find their own best solutions. To achieve this mission, we offer mediation, facilitation, and trainings just like this one to strengthen the ability of diverse individuals and groups to resolve interpersonal conflicts and community issues. Our Brown Bag Lunch series is held every third Thursday at 12 noon on Zoom. You do have to register for each event on Eventbrite, but that will ensure that you do get that Zoom link sent out to you. Our next Brown Bag Talk is July 18th, and we will be having speaker Laura Reed come and talk on the topic of the power of storytelling for compassion and community. I've gone ahead and put the link into the chat, so feel free to sign up for that next time. All right, everyone, at the end of today's talk, we'll ask you to fill out a short survey, which will help with our grant funding for this free series. So when I put the survey link in the chat, please take a moment to give us your thoughts. They really make a difference. We'll also send out an email later with the slides, video link, and survey link. All right, without further ado, let me introduce our topic, which is unlocking effective communication through DISC personality types. And our speaker is Arliss Dudley-Cash. She's a writer, consultant, and TV host, as well as inspirational speaker and business coach. Combining business, neuroscience, and personal resilience, she empowers clients through award-winning talks on self-love and mindful entrepreneurship. In 2019, she founded Solutions LLC to help entrepreneurs, professionals, and busy human beings who are struggling to balance their life's challenges and business management. All right, Arliss, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much. And as we get started, I would love to thank Shelby and Julie for putting this series together and for having me here today. And today is going to be very as interactive as all of you want it to be. And so I'm going to ask everybody to consider unmuting and give a big woohoo thank you for Shelby and Julie today and doing this series for us. Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to encourage you, highly encourage you to check out Laura Reed's workshop for the next one. She's a dear friend of mine, and she is my speaking coach. She has been an incredible inspiration in my life, and her workshops are always amazing. So if you're on the fence, you should definitely register for the next one coming up. Okay, so I'd love to get to know some of you a little bit better before we dive in. And if you feel comfortable, I would like to invite you to consider unmuting, sharing your name, and in 30 seconds or less, stating something you're grateful for today. Would anybody like to introduce themselves?
I'm Georgia. I'm grateful for living on Big Island.
Welcome, Georgia. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo!
Woohoo.
Who would like to go next?
I could, Dr. Rayburn.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Analia Atkinson. I'm over on Kauai. I'm a retired Mediation Center director, still doing volunteer mediation and hoping to put a peer mediation program into the public schools.
Awesome. And what are you grateful for today, quickly?
What am I grateful for? Oh, I'm grateful. I've just been at 2 meetings where people come together with kindness in their minds and a desire to help people. And I love being together with people like that.
I love that. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo! Okay, who would like to go last? Who would like to introduce themselves and share something they're grateful for?
Aloha, this is Tricia Morris. I'm on Maui, and I'm grateful to be a part of this wonderful community of mediation.
Yeah, let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo! And I see that Shelby says that she's grateful for beautiful nature, and Carolyn says that she's grateful that her ankle has healed, and Darcy is grateful for the summer, and Darlene is grateful for music. Thank you so much for sharing your gratitude with all of us today. What a way to start out this session. And I want to let you all know that I am incredibly grateful to be here and to be of service with all of you today. I feel very passionate about all of us having the tools to be able to communicate better and to have more peace and joy in our lives. And I hope that today supports you in that in just a little way, and you'll be able to continue to grow with that in the Brown Bag series that the Mediation Center has put together for you. So we're going to talk about a number of different ways to kind of look at communication and communication types and how to communicate with each other and identify what our communication type is, and then identify what other people's communication type is, and be able to notice when it might be a little bit different. Show of hands, anybody here ever try to communicate with somebody and you're like, wow, it's like we're speaking a foreign language, even though we are speaking the same language? Show of hands. Yeah, right. That happens. And we're not alone in that. Okay. It's a very human experience. One of my favorite questions to ask, are there any humans in the room? Show of hands, any humans in the room? Check that out. Yep. We're all humans in this room, which means that we all have experiences where sometimes we might miss the mark a little bit or misunderstand something a little bit, and that's okay. We can keep growing in this area of communication and make it a little bit easier for us and for the people around us. So I would love to encourage all of you to put a woohoo into the chat to support all of those that introduced themselves and shared what they are grateful for today. I really appreciate all of you being here. Okay. So what does it mean to you to communicate? What does it mean to you to communicate? You can go ahead and put it in the chat. And I'd love to encourage a couple of people to unmute. I have my little timer here, and in 1 minute or less to share with me what you feel like it means to communicate. Who would like to share? Cheryl P., would you be open to sharing?
Sure. Thank you. What does communication mean to me? I think it's sharing of an idea, and then understanding, trying to reach an understanding of what is being shared.
Yeah, I love that, Cheryl. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo! And Darlene.
Yeah, I just said that it's the message that's sent is the message that's received.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Can everybody still see me and hear me by chance?
Yes.
My computer just totally went black screen.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay. Well, and if I do, can you still see my slides by chance?
Yes.
And if I do this, do the slides go forward?
nothing changed on your slide for me.
We're on the communication slide. What does it mean to communicate?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't see anybody and my screen is completely black. I don't know if Shelby or Julie, if you want to stop my screen share and move to your screen share. I can't see anybody and I can't see the chat. Oh, maybe it came back. Oh, maybe that just did it. Thank you so much.
I've just
Isn't
gone ahead
technology,
and unshared your slides, so just go ahead and maybe reshare.
yeah, isn't technology amazing, guys? Guess what? We're back. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo! Go technology. So, Darlene, can you share that one more time for me? Oh,
The
it did
mess-
it again. Shelby, if you wouldn't mind unsharing my screen. I don't know what's going on.
The message that is sent is the message that is received.
Yeah, the message that is sent is the message that is received. That's beautiful. So Cheryl's talked about having a mutual understanding, right? Being able to share and have a mutual understanding. And Darlene talked about being able to have the message that is shared be the message that's received. And I'm wondering if Shelby, if you'd be willing to try sharing my slides and seeing if that works. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So-
Give me just one moment.
No problem. So what I'm hearing from everyone is that it's about not only being able to express ourselves, but for the people on the other side to really be able to be on the same page that we're on. Does that sound like what we're trying to say here? Yeah, and I see that in the chat, Charlie put in communication for me is coming to common understanding. And Shirley said that it's relaying a message that is understood by the other party and vice versa. Absolutely. And we all have had that feeling of when we're communicating with somebody, having it feel like, wow, they really get me, or I really get them. We're really on the same page. Show of hands. Who's had that feeling before?
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. And there's nothing like it, right? That feeling of common ground and being in a mutual place is such a beautiful place to be. So when we're looking at that, the next part of the presentation is on types of, oh, here we go. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, if you want to just move forward and then Yep, there we go. Okay, so there are three types of communication styles. There's passive, and then there is, and thank you so much, Shelby, for your help. And then there's assertive, and then there's aggressive. And I want you to know that there's no judgment on any of these, okay? There's no judgment on any of these, and we all tend to use different communication types depending on the people that we're communicating with and the situations that we're in, okay? And we may be mostly in the assertive space, which is the place that feels the most peaceful, I think, overall. And depending on the circumstances, we might move into passive, or we might move into aggressive, or depending on the person that we're communicating with. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types. And I want you, as you're hearing these descriptions, to think about, does this remind me of a circumstance I have in my life, or a person I have in my life, or an experience that I've had in my life when it's applied, okay, without judgment or making it right or wrong. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, awesome. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is a graph from Psychotherapy Central, and they have so many amazing diagrams that are really helpful to understand these different topics. So here we go. So passive is my needs, that feeling of my needs are not important. Not that feeling of not being heard. The feeling of you are okay outside. Person outside of us is okay, but we are not okay. Maybe we are in a situation where we tend to give in and say yes to things that we wouldn't want to say yes to ordinarily. Maybe we allow ourselves to be bullied a little bit in different circumstances. Maybe we feel reluctant to share our true thoughts, or we try to quote unquote keep the peace on the outside, but not the peace within. Has anybody ever experienced anything like this before in their life? Show of hands. Show of hands. Yeah, look around the room. Guess what? We're not alone. Okay, I want you to know that this happens sometimes in different circumstances. And I always feel like the first way to make a shift in something is to be real about what's going on, right? We can't make a shift and shift closer towards something else that we would like to be doing differently unless we know where we are to begin with. So thank you everyone for sharing that you've experienced that before. So the next one we're going to look at is aggressive. So in aggressive, only our needs matter. Okay, we might talk over others. We might feel like we're okay, but maybe outside of us or the people around us are not okay. We might tend to take over. We might tend to unintentionally bully others. When we express ourselves, it might come out in a louder tone than we would normally like to. And we tend to be really focused on looking after ourselves in that place, and not necessarily from a healthy, joyous place, but maybe from a slightly fearful place. Has anybody ever experienced this type of communication before, where you felt a little aggressive towards others? Maybe somebody took your parking spot or something like that. Show of hands, anybody felt that way before? Yeah, right? It comes up, right? We said we were human, right? We have these human emotions and it happens. And then the middle one is assertiveness. So this is my needs are important as everyone else's. It's easy flow of talking and listening. It's I'm okay and you're okay. I tend to compromise, or compromise as possible between the people that I'm communicating with. And I stand up for myself. I find it easy to express my thoughts, and I try to make things fair. Has anybody experienced assertive communication before? A show of hands? Yeah, guess what? I saw a lot of the same people raise their hands for all three, because we have the whole spectrum in us, and that's what makes us beautifully the people that we are. Now, I will say that generally, when we are in that assertive communication place, it's the place that can feel most peaceful and comfortable to us most of the time. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can move a little bit closer to that. Now, I'm not talking about completely dropping passive or completely dropping aggressive. I'm talking about just making a small shift. So as we go through today, I want you to identify one thing that stands out to you that can maybe, as you thought of that individual you were communicating with, that maybe passiveness comes up with, or that circumstance where aggressiveness comes up with, maybe there's a little shift that can happen that's a little closer to assertive. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is a little bit more of the explanation of what these might look like. And so if it didn't ring, if my definitions didn't ring any bells for you, you might think of passiveness is that more of a people-pleasing place. So that I don't mind, that's okay, and saying like, yes, all right, when we don't really feel that way completely. And then aggressive is, this is what we're doing, and if you don't like it, tough, you know, that feeling of having a really hard line. And then the assertive is, that's a good idea. How about if we did this too, or I can see that, but I'd really like to, and finding that compromise and really finding that place where both parties are heard, right, and understood, finding that common ground of commonality. Next slide, please. Yeah. And Darlene said, I can see fairness as peaceful enough. I love that. I love that. Okay. So what are some of the outcomes of being passive? Now, I really like to look at the details of things, right? For me, when I can see what the outcomes might be if I choose to remain in a passive place, then it helps me feel motivated to find that next step towards assertive, right? So what are some of the outcomes of passiveness? A lot of times it's higher stress, right? Because when we are in that passive place, and notice that I'm saying we, because I go there too. Okay, I'm right there with you guys. When we go to that passive place, we feel like we don't have control over the situation, and we don't feel like maybe our voice matters, or that we can impact the situation as much, and that feeling creates stress. We also may feel resentment, because if we are being passive towards another, we may feel as though they are making choices that we would not choose for ourselves, and then resentment may come up. There are other ones if you want to just click through Yeah. It can actually lead to anger, feelings of victimization, and a desire to enact revenge even. And it also can lead to doubting or questioning our own judgment and feeling that lack of self-trust, which can make it really hard for us to express ourselves fully in our communication. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so when we come from a place of aggressive, we might accidentally scare or intimidate other people. We may lead them to avoid or oppose us. And I think there's one more there. Oh, maybe I was wrong. Okay. And so when we are acting in that aggressive way, we may be eliciting a fear response from the people around us, inadvertently. So I see in the chat that, Carolyn said that I had trouble interacting with aggressive people. Yeah, it can be overwhelming sometimes to interact with aggressive people. And I think it can be hard to see that they are most likely responding from a very fearful place. When I'm able to remind myself this person is most likely responding from a fearful place, I can feel a little bit more compassion for where they might be. And Georgia said, when passive, it can be just disingenuous. Absolutely. So when we're being passive, we're typically not fully expressing ourselves, and expressing how we really feel about things. So thank you, Carolyn and Georgia, for sharing. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we are able to act from an assertive place, it can help us feel less stress and less anger. And it also allows us to have access to our coping skills. Because when we're in that assertive place, we're able to use our prefrontal cortex and ask ourselves questions and be able to identify those things that can help us in stressful situations. Assertiveness can also help us express ourselves effectively and stand up for our point of view. It can help us while respecting the rights and beliefs of others, right? And knowing that it's okay if we disagree. It's okay if people hold a different opinion than us. It also can help us boost our self-esteem, and it may especially help us reduce our stress when we tend to take too many responsibilities on, or when it's hard to say no. Does anybody find it hard to say no? Show of hands. Anybody out there? Yes, absolutely. It can be so hard to say no. And so when we are in that place of assertiveness, when we are trusting and believing and respecting ourselves, and trusting and believing and respecting the people that we're interacting with, it can be much easier to say no, because we feel that sense of care for ourselves and the care for respecting our own beliefs. Now, I'm going to ask all of us to practice saying no. This is something I do in so many of my talks because I feel like we can all use the practice to say no. So I'm going to count to 3, and on 3, I would love for everybody to unmute, and we're all going to say no together. Okay, is everybody ready? 1, 2, 3.
No.
Ole.
No.
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 Ole.
Great job, everyone. Let's give everybody a big woohoo. Woohoo!
Woohoo.
So the next time that something comes up that you don't want to do, or you would like to excuse yourself from, guess what? We all know that you can say no because you just did. It's in you. You just have to let it out. And the more you practice, the easier it'll become. So as you can see, when we're able to really practice assertiveness in our communication, we're better able to support and love and care for ourselves, as well as show support and love and care for other people. And that's where that mutual understanding comes, right? It may not come from mutual agreement. Mutual understanding may not come from mutual agreement, and that's okay, but it does come from care and love and respect for both individuals. Okay, next slide. So what are the outcomes of practicing assertiveness? We gain self-confidence and self-esteem. We gain a sense of empowerment. We understand and recognize our own feelings, right? How can we really be challenging ourselves to understand others if we're not willing to take the moment to understand how we're really feeling, even if it's in a way that might be in disagreement with the other person, right? Finding a way to be able to disagree in a caring and loving fashion. It also allows for people to see who we really are, and that engenders more respect. It improves communication. It creates win-win situations. It also improves decision-making, and it creates honest relationships. And I think that that's really what we are looking for at the end of the day in our communication, is to have mutual understanding and honesty, to know that we are on the same page. Next slide, please. Oh, and we also gain better job satisfaction. So how do we start practicing assertiveness? Well, I want all of you to really consider what style you are using for communication in the different circumstances you're in, right? If our goal is to move closer to assertiveness, depending on who we're communicating with and depending on the situation we're in, that communication style might look different, right? We might have someone that when we're around them, we just have a history of being in that passive place. And so we're more likely to be passive. Or we might have a situation that really causes a fear response in us. And so we're more likely to go to that aggressive place. So start assessing what style you're using in different circumstances so that you can be aware of what that is and see if you're moving closer to that assertive place. I also want to encourage you to use I statements. And I want to encourage you to practice saying no. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is to consider when you wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, tell yourself that you love yourself first, and then think of something you don't want to do that day. Like today, I don't want to change 30 dirty diapers. That's not something I choose to do with my day today. I don't even have children, but I don't want to do that, right? It could be something that's way outside of what would be normally happening in your life, and practice saying no to it and watch yourself saying no. Build that confidence up with your no so that you can feel as though you're in a place to really be able to speak that no when you're in a place where you don't really want to be doing the next thing. Rehearse what you want to say before you interact with people. So if you know you have a history of a passive style communication or aggressive style communication, and you want to move it a little bit closer to that assertive communication, practice what you want to say before you're in this circumstance. Use your body language. Keep your emotions in check. What I mean by that is know what's going on with yourself. I'm not talking about closing them away in a closet or saying, I'm not going to feel that. I'm talking about really knowing what's going on for you. And then start small, okay? We want to be able to make small changes to be able to reach a goal. It's much easier to have sustained small changes than try to make a huge change right off the bat. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about the DISC profile. So who here knows what you are on the DISC profile? Show of hands. Who here knows what you are on the DISC profile? Anybody? Couple people? If you do, I'd love for you to put it into the chat, okay? Yeah, and so on the DISC profile, there are 4 different personality types. There's dominance, compliance, influence, and steadiness. And there are a number of free online tests that you can take to identify your DISC profile. And it allows us to really understand how a person enjoys communicating, or how they're most likely to receive positive communication, especially when they are different than what we are. For instance, a D trying to communicate with an S, they're going to have to really kind of change their communication style a little bit to be able to, for the S to fully embrace what's happening and feel heard in that situation. So when we look at this graph, we see that on the x-axis, we have extroverted versus introverted, and on the y-axis, we have task-oriented versus people-oriented. So the Ds are very task and thinking-oriented, and they're extroverted, fast-paced. And then on the Cs are very task-oriented and thinking, but they're introverted and they have a reserved pace. The influencers have, or the Is, are intuitional based. They're people-oriented, feeling. And then the steadiness are people-oriented, feeling, and they are introverted and they're sensing. So this kind of gives you an idea, and we're going to go into more detail on it in just a few minutes. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, and I got ahead of myself. I told you all of this before it was on there. Well, you're going to get a copy of my slides. And so if what I explained orally was a little confusing, you can look back on these words and dive into it a little bit more. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I love this graph because it's represented by different birds, and I'm a very visual person. It helps me understand the different personality types more easily. Okay, so as I'm reading this off, I want you to think of people that you know that might fit these personality types. They might be you, or it might be someone close to you that you work with, or a family member, and see if you can kind of identify these characteristics in the people that are around you, because it'll help you when we talk about the communication part. So Ds are decisive. They're competitive, right? So anytime that there is competition involved at a family reunion or in an office setting, they're the first one that can't wait to be on the team, and they can't wait to win. Okay, they love winning, not necessarily at the at the negative impact of others, but they just love that feeling of competition. They're daring, they're direct, they're persistent, they're adventurous, they're problem solvers. Is this bringing anyone to mind in your life? Can anyone think of anyone in their life that's a D? Show of hands. Yeah, Julie, can you tell me who you can think of? You don't have to give a name, but maybe you can just share, like, I know this person and that sort of thing.
Oh, I know several people like that. So, and I think I can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I did see that Georgia put in, there are no negative traits here. So can some of these parts of the different personality traits be used negatively? Sure, right? But we're going to focus on the positive here, right? And there are positives and some drawbacks to all the different personality traits. And I think that it's really wonderful to really celebrate the positives and the different personality traits. And so that's why I've focused on that today. So thank you for noticing. And if you want to dive more into it, there are lots of websites that do show the positive and the negative. Okay. So I am a D, and I And one of the ways I know I'm a D is because it doesn't matter what sports team I'm watching or what sport I'm watching. I could literally be watching competition synchronized diving, and I will want to cheer somebody on. I will want somebody to eke out that win. Okay, so I know that I'm a D. I can just feel that competitive spirit in me. So interactives or influencers or I's are charming, confident, convincing, enthusiastic, inspiring, optimistic, persuasive, sociable, and trusting. Can any of you think of an I that you know in your life? Show of hands. Can anybody think of any I's? Yeah, right. Kevin, I see your hand. How do you know that they're an I? What gives them away?
Well, someone I'm thinking of, goes the extra yard to be, communicative and charming and big ideaed and like a balloon in the sky kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo! Thank you, Kevin. So, I have one of my really good friends. We are networking buddies. And if she gets to a networking event before I do, she knows everybody in the room and she can't wait to introduce me. And she has 3 new best friends, right? That friend of mine who's incredible at networking, right? She is a total I. She is a total I. She could literally talk to anybody anywhere and create an amazing experience in that. Okay. So S's are supportive, they're understanding, friendly, they're good listeners, they're patient, they're relaxed, they're sincere, they're stable, they're steady, they're a team player. It is more important to an S that it is overall fair to everybody involved than anything else. Can anybody think of an S in their life? Show of hands. Anybody? Let's see here. Darlene, how did your S give themselves away?
Well, for one thing, they're very family oriented, and so supporting the family and being supportive to the family is top on their list.
Yeah,
There.
absolutely. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woo! So one of my best friends in the whole wide world is an S, and she is so loyal and kind to the people in her life. And what we're going to learn later on is that S's need time to make decisions. They can't make a decision right like that for the most part. And so whenever I know something's coming down the line that my friend's going to need to make a decision about that I know the information of, I share with her as early as I possibly can so that she has plenty of time to make that decision. Georgia, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to point out that supportive person, not only a good listener, but they ask questions
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
the other person to draw.
Yeah, they really want to know in depth what's going on with the other person. Great observation, Georgia. Thank you so much. And then we have the C's. They're conscientious, they're accurate, precise, analytical, compliant, courteous, diplomatic, detailed, fact finder, and objective. And my husband is a C. And he wants to know, like if we were going to go out and buy a lawnmower tomorrow, he would want to know all of the specifications, exactly how much it's going to cost, how much lawn it's going to cut before the battery has to be charged again, and all of those things before we even walk into the store, right? He wants to know the absolute minutia of things to feel really comfortable. Does anybody know of any C's in their life? Show of hands. Wants to know the minutia? Yeah, I see you guys. Absolutely. Analia, did you raise your hand? I thought I saw your hand up.
No, but it's always good to have one of them on your team.
Yes, and Karen put in accountants. Absolutely. And even more CPAs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really great to have on your team. Okay, so everyone has done an amazing job of being able to identify these different personality types, either in yourself or in the people around you. And now we're going to talk about the details of how they like to communicate and how we can communicate with them better to have that mutual understanding that we've talked about in the past. Great job, everyone. Next slide, please. Okay, how do Ds communicate? D personality types tend to communicate in one direction. They say what they think and express their opinions as facts. D types tend to have short concentration spans and as a result often interrupt if they are bored or frustrated with where the conversation is going. They are big picture thinkers, so they often talk about achievements, plans, or goals. They communicate, they may have trouble understanding others' viewpoint, especially if they involve feelings without the backup of facts. They don't tend to be interested in why someone feels a certain way, but prefer to know what they have decided to do about it. Okay, so they really want to know where we're going and how we're getting there and when are we leaving to do it. Okay, these really want the short facts and what the goal is and what the outcome is going to be. They're extremely outcome driven. Okay, they're extremely outcome driven. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, I's. So the I personality type often gets distracted easily by the environment. Okay, does anybody have a friend that is very squirrel oriented? Anybody know that reference? Squirrel, 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 shiny object, hummingbird syndrome. I think it's actually a very joyous thing, right? I think it's a really beautiful thing in others because they always notice the beauty around them. They're always watching others. They often stray from the topic at hand. They tell people stories, especially about themselves. The profile communication styles are very open and they discuss their feelings. They are not shy to offer their opinions and feedback, but only if they know it won't cause conflict. They are very animated when they talk, especially when agreeing with you. And so if you know somebody that talks a lot with their hands, that is most likely somebody that might be an I. Okay, so they might be an I. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yes, and there is some correlation with the Myers-Briggs, absolutely. It's not like a direct specific correlation, like a D equals this in Myers-Briggs, but there's a lot of correlation there. And so you can look up how they correlate. So how do S's communicate? So S personality types are easygoing. They appear outwardly calm. They listen carefully. They seem very engaged. S styles nod and seem to go along with things. But we have to be careful because they may be saying that they have heard us when they nod, okay? Not that they agree with us. And this is very important to know about S's. They want everyone to feel heard and cared for. And so they nod their head. Yes, I hear you. I hear you. That does not mean that they agree with what they're hearing. They are not easily excited or animated. They have strong opinions, but often keep them quiet. Sometimes S's, we have to draw them out and ask them questions to get their opinions. They ask questions about specifics and tend to say, let me think about it when they are asked to come to a decision. Okay, S's need a little bit more time for that decision-making process. Next slide, please. Okay, and the C's. Look at that cute owl. Oh, I love that picture. So C personality types appear reserved and reasonably quiet. They usually prefer to use written communications such as emails. They focus on details and want all the information to ensure that they make correct decisions. They tend to ask a lot of questions and study the specifics and details. They prefer communication where they can focus on facts and figures rather than opinions and feelings. And they may appear very critical and overly diplomatic. But that is not necessarily from a critical standpoint. It's from the place of really wanting to get specific. Okay. So we have all identified ourselves or other people as D's, I's, S's, or C's. I see so much nodding happening on the screen. So we all see the different people in our lives. So how do we communicate with them in their communication style? Next slide, please. Okay, so with D's, oh, let's go back one. There we go. So we can provide direct answers and act quickly. These are very time-oriented. We don't want to ramble or waffle. And limiting the small talk really helps Ds feel focused. They like to focus on the problems so they like to focus on the solutions. So they don't want us, when we're communicating with them, to focus on the problems and negatives because they're very solutions oriented. They want to have support and detail in what's being communicated with them. And they want to know our decisions. So when we bring something to a D, we should know that, that we already have our answer. And we want to focus on the bottom line issues and results, okay? So the next one is the I. So we want to maintain a positive atmosphere. We want to help to achieve popularity and recognition. Remember, I's love to be on stage. They want to allow them to express themselves and take time to chat and talk and socialize, be more expressive and enthusiastic, focus on the big picture, okay? They don't want small details, and focus on the people aspect. So before we go on, I just want to pause here, and I want to ask people, for the D's in your life, what's one takeaway that you were able to identify that you'd like to do a little bit different to have better communication with your D's? What's one takeaway? Does anybody want to share or unmute? What do you think,
That seems-
Darlene? Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
That seems to be the most reasonable kind of person.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know if you identify yourself as a D, but you might feel, oh,
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm
you
trying
might
to go back to that slide so you can have that up for everyone, but
yeah, if we go to the one that's a little bit later, one more, there we go. Yeah, and I saw that Darlene put in the chat to be more assertive about decisions. And Mike put in to have an idea or answer in mind already when communicating with a D. That is huge, Mike. Mike, and that is huge. Let's give both of those a big woohoo. Woohoo! So would anybody like to share one takeaway that they had for interacting or communicating with their I's in their life? What would you like to implement to communicate better with the I's in your life?
I would just say that it's probably important to, because they like popularity, make sure that you're on the right side of the crowd.
Yeah, so being able, I would say, and another way to say that, thank you so much for sharing that, Raju. So another way that I would say that is to open up our networks to people, introduce them to our friends, introduce them to our business associates. They really love to make those connections. And I see that Julie said, give appreciation, absolutely. And let them take center stage. Fabulous. Let's give both of those a big woohoo. Woohoo!
Whoa.
Next slide, please. Okay, so we have our S's next. And the ways that we communicate with our S's is to proceed in a logical order. They like to know A follow and then B and then C, or 1, 2, 3. They really love that stepwise approach. They really like to proceed at a slower pace. We want to ask them questions to figure out their true feelings and needs and provide them with enough time to reflect. We want to provide them with support and ask for their opinions, especially if they have kept quiet. And we don't want to assume that their quiet means acceptance. And we also want to provide them with precedents or facts to reduce their uncertainty. Okay. So what is the one thing that you want to implement to be able to communicate with S's a little bit better? Go ahead and unmute. Ooh, Darlene put a good one in there. I want to hear from you, Darlene.
Just to be patient, because they're going to need all that time and slowness. So that means you're going to need to put on your best patience.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And try not to interrupt them. Don't ask for too much. Allow them time to respond. Let's give all of that a big woohoo. Woohoo! Okay, next slide, please. So lastly, we have our C's. So when we communicate with C's, we want to discover, oopsie, we'll go back. Yeah. Discover the key issues and focus on them. Answer questions calmly and carefully. Be thorough, include all the information. So C's want to know every single little detail of minutia. We want to utilize supporting materials, slow down your presentation, and listen carefully. Another key part of communicating with a C is to not take their specificity as criticalness, okay? So to see their specificity is just their need to understand and wanting to understand the logistics. So what is your big takeaway for wanting to communicate with C's? Ooh, Raju says, ask questions. Analia, do you have a takeaway for how you want to communicate with the C's in your life?
Well, I like the listening. I put that in before when we were talking about conversation. I think you need to give them keys that you've really heard them. Like when they say something, give them feedback that you got it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great share. Let's give that a big woohoo. Woohoo!
Woo-hoo.
And then I also see in the chat, give the why. High context people need to see the big picture. Absolutely great job. So Shelby, I'm going to ask you to stop the share screen for now. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, being so interactive, being willing to dive into this topic so deeply, and look at how we can communicate with the people around us a little bit better so that we can come to that mutual understanding. I'm here if you have any questions, and if not, I hope you had an amazing time and a wonderful workshop today, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Arliss.
Thank
I hope
you.
you all enjoyed that. That was a lot of information, but hopefully we're all able to take that and bite-size it and practice it throughout the day and start identifying those personality types as we come across them. All right, everyone, that was wonderful. I'm just going to pop our survey link into the chat here. Thank you all so much for coming. Please take a few minutes to fill out our short online survey.
Shelby, because
yes.
we have 5 minutes left, I think we do have time for some questions.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, let's open it up to some Q&A. Please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have a question for Arliss.
And thank you so much for all the appreciation in the chat. It really means a lot to me to know that the information was helpful today.
I have a question for you, Arliss.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give a personal example of how you've actually utilized what you just taught in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of different things. I'm a business consultant, but I also work for Business Networking International as a chapter success coach, and I support small business entrepreneurs in having successful networking groups. And my boss is an I. He's an amazing person, by the way. I hope he gets to come and speak at the Brown Bag at some point. I'll have to introduce you. But knowing that he's an I know that he loves to be on stage. He loves to speak. He loves to really give presentations. So anytime one of my chapters is having a visitor's day, or there are opportunities like a Brown Bag workshop or other speaking opportunities, I always ask him or nominate him. And whether or not he's chosen, it means so much to him that I remember that about him. And he is very good at what he does as far as presentations. And so it's almost like speaking his love language through personality types, right? He knows that I get him and that I notice what's important to him. And I try to create those opportunities for him. So yeah. Great question. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Arliss. Okay, everyone, survey link is again in the chat. Please take a few minutes to do that. We will close that survey early next month, so please try to get those in as soon as you're able. And feel free to check your emails in the coming days for slides from this presentation, a video link, and again, we'll put in that survey link. So mahalo, and we'll see everyone next month.
Woohoo!
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 Woohoo,
I love it.
Arliss.
Thank you.